Chapter 1. Ancient Oracles, Voices from the Sacred. We humans have always carried a hunger for meaning. In every age, in every land, we turn to oracles, messengers from the unseen, to guide our steps. And though their methods differed, the essence was always the same: to pierce the veil of the ordinary and glimpse the deeper order of existence. The Oracle of Delphi. Perched on the slopes of Mount Parnassus stood Delphi, the spiritual heart of the Greek world. Here, in a temple dedicated to Apollo, the god of light and truth, a woman known as the Pythia would enter trance and speak words that could alter the course of nations. Kings and generals traveled weeks to ask her counsel. Before a war was declared, before a colony was founded, before any great decision, Delphi was consulted. But her answers were never simple. She spoke in riddles, leaving room for interpretation, reflection, and sometimes terrible misjudgment. When King Croesus of Lydia asked whether he should attack Persia, the oracle replied, "If you cross the river, a great empire will fall." Croesus assumed she meant the Persian Empire. He attacked, and it was his own empire that crumbled. This was the wisdom of Delphi, truth revealed but never spoon-fed. The oracle did not dictate. It mirrored possibilities, showing the seeker more about themselves than about the gods. Above the temple were carved two words: "Know thyself," perhaps the truest oracle of all. Dream temples of Egypt. The Greeks were not alone. In Egypt, centuries earlier, people sought visions through incubation rituals, sleeping in sacred dream temples dedicated to Imhotep or Serapis. Pilgrims would lie upon stone beds, hoping that in the silence of the night, dreams would carry healing or prophecy. The priests did not tell them what to do. They only helped them read the language of their own subconscious. These dream temples remind us of something essential, that the oracle's voice is not always external. Sometimes it comes from the deepest chambers of our own mind. The runes and the organs. Far to the north, the Norse people carved runes on wood or bone. Each rune was a letter, but also a symbol, a seed of myth. When cast, they revealed the hidden weave of fate, a reflection of the world tree Yggdrasil itself. And in Rome, the augurs lifted their eyes to the sky. The flight of birds, the crack of thunder, even the entrails of sacrificed animals, all were read as signs from the gods. To the modern mind, this may seem bizarre, even grotesque, but for the ancients, the divine was woven into every fiber of existence. To watch the world carefully was to listen to its secret language. A universal pattern. Across cultures, we see the same impulse, to reach beyond the ordinary. The Greeks listened to a trance-bound priestess. The Egyptians sought wisdom in dreams. The Norse in runes. The Romans in the wings of birds. Each system was different, yet all were based on the same principle, that the universe speaks in symbols, and that humans can, if attentive, read them. Today, we often laugh at augurs or dismiss dream temples as superstition. But consider this. Aren't we still searching for patterns in the chaos? We rely on economists for market forecasts, on often ideologically entrenched scientists for climate models, and on psychologists for interpreting our subconscious urges. Often the so-called experts are paid in advance to announce the desired results, just like fortune tellers of the past who flattered their rulers with well-intentioned predictions. In a way, we still live among oracles, only dressed in modern clothes and at least as susceptible to manipulation. Ambiguity. As wisdom, one striking feature of ancient oracles is their deliberate ambiguity. The Pythia's words were cryptic, the dream images of Egypt symbolic, the runes open-ended. Why? Because the oracle was never about delivering a clear, fixed future. It was about reflection, about activating the seeker's own wisdom. An ambiguous prophecy forces interpretation, and in the act of interpreting, the seeker confronts their own desires, fears, and blind spots. The ambiguity is the mirror. The psychological lens here is where ancient wisdom intersects with modern psychology. Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist, spoke of archetypes, universal patterns of the human psyche that appear in myths, symbols, and dreams. For Jung, oracles like tarot or the I Ching worked because they tapped into these archetypes. When a symbol appeared, it resonated with the unconscious, drawing out insights that rational analysis alone could not reach. Jung even used the I Ching himself, casting coins when faced with decisions. He did not believe the oracle predicted the future, but rather that it revealed the psyche's hidden tendencies through what he called synchronicity. meaningful coincidence. Thus the ancients and the moderns agree, the oracle is not about dictating fate. It is about holding up a mirror to the soul. The call of the sacred oracles were always surrounded by ritual. At Delphi, the Pythia would purify herself in the Castalian spring, chew laurel leaves, inhale fumes from the earth. In Egypt, pilgrims fasted before sleeping in temples. The Norse carved their runes with reverence, often in sacred groves. These rituals were not superstition. They were thresholds. They prepared the mind to cross from ordinary consciousness into the sacred space where symbols speak. And isn't that still true today? Light a candle, shuffle cards slowly, breathe deeply. The ritual opens the inner ear. So what do the ancients teach us? That oracles were never about certainty. They were about connection to the divine, to the cosmos, to the hidden depths of the self. The Oracle of Delphi, the dream temples of Egypt, the runes of the Norse, the auguries of Rome. Each was a different language, but all spoke the same truth. The universe is alive with meaning, and we are part of its story. And at the heart of every oracle lies the same invitation, the same words carved at Delphi more than 2,000 years ago. Know thyself. Chapter 2. The Mirror Principle, Seeing the Soul. When most people think of oracles, they imagine fortune tellers declaring the future with absolute certainty. You will meet a tall stranger, or beware, disaster awaits you on Tuesday. But that is not what true oracles are about. To understand oracles, we must understand the mirror principle, the idea that an oracle is not a command, but a reflection. The difference between magic and oracle. In the world of esotericism, it is easy to confuse magic and oracles. They are often thrown together in the same pot, but in truth they are opposites. Magic is active. The magician tries to project their will into the world, to focus energy like a laser beam to bend reality. Oracle is passive. The seeker does not project but receives. They look into the mirror of existence, letting symbols emerge without force. When you try to control, you leave the path of the oracle. But when you surrender, when you allow symbols, dreams, or cards to speak, you invite reflection. This is why oracles can be so transformative. They do not tell you what to do, they show you what you already are. The mirror, in philosophy and mysticism. This idea of the mirror is ancient. Mystics across cultures have described reality as a reflection. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. The small reflects the great. In Hermetic philosophy, this principle is captured in the words, as above, so below, as within, so without. The medieval Christian mystic Meister Eckhart spoke of the soul as a polished mirror that reflects divine light. In Buddhism, the mind is compared to a mirror that reflects all phenomena clearly once freed from dust. Oracles, then, are tools that help us polish that mirror. They remind us that what we see in the outer world is never separate from the inner. Psychology and the unconscious. Modern psychology gives us another language for this. Carl Jung described the human mind as filled with archetypes, patterns that shape how we think, dream, and behave. Oracles, whether tarot cards or the I Ching, work because they bring these archetypes to the surface. When you draw the card of the Fool, for example, you are confronted with the archetype of innocence, of beginnings, of risk-taking. Whether you like it or not, you must face how this symbol resonates in your life. Jung called this process active imagination, engaging with symbols not as abstract ideas, but as living mirrors of the psyche. He also coined the term synchronicity, the phenomenon of meaningful coincidence. When you shuffle a deck of cards and pull one at random, you encounter not pure chance, but a symbolic reflection of your inner state at that moment. This is why an oracle reading can feel so uncannily accurate. The card, the rune, the hexagram resonates, not because it was preordained by fate, but because your psyche recognizes its truth. Science and the mirror of nature. Some might ask, but isn't all this just superstition? Consider how modern science has stumbled upon similar principles. In the study of fractals, we see how the small reflects the large. A tiny fern leaf repeats the same pattern as the entire fern. The branching of blood vessels mirrors the branching of rivers. The spiral of a seashell echoes the spiral of galaxies. This is not mysticism, but mathematics. Nature itself is a mirror, repeating patterns across scales. Oracles work on a similar principle. A single card or rune is a fractal, a small reflection of the larger whole of your life. By studying the part, you glimpse the pattern of the whole. The art of letting go, but for the mirror to work, one thing is required: letting go. If you come to an oracle with a rigid demand, "Tell me if I will be rich tomorrow," you will project your fears and desires onto it. The mirror clouds. But if you approach openly, asking not for certainty but for insight, the mirror clears. This is why the best oracle readings happen when the seeker is receptive, quiet, almost childlike in curiosity. The less you try to force the answer, the more the answer finds you. Examples of the mirror in oracles. All oracle systems, no matter how different, follow this mirror principle. Tarot shows you archetypes. The tower collapses, the star renews, death transforms. These are not predictions, but reflections of what is stirring in you now. As the I Ching reveals patterns of change, are you in a time of growth, of retreat, of waiting? And runes call forth mythic forces, ice, fire, journey, harvest, that remind you of life's cycles. Nature walks mirror your soul in chance encounters. A bird crossing your path, a tree struck by lightning, a stream suddenly blocked. The form differs, but the function is the same: reflection. Why ambiguity is powerful? Many modern skeptics complain, oracles are vague. Their messages could mean anything. But this is precisely their strength. An oracle that told you exactly what to do would enslave your will. A vague oracle forces you to engage, to interpret, to reflect. Think again of Delphi. When the Pythia told Croesus that a great empire would fall, she was not lying. She was giving him a mirror. His downfall came not from the oracle's words, but from his interpretation of them. Ambiguity is not a flaw, it is a gift. It keeps the oracle from becoming a dictator. It keeps the power of decision in your hands. The mirror, as a path of self-knowledge. In this way, the oracle becomes not a map of the future, but a mirror of the soul. To consult an oracle is to ask, what is happening within me? What pattern am I living? What truth am I ignoring? The answer does not come from outside. It arises within, sparked by the symbol. And so, every true oracle ultimately leads back to the same place: self-knowledge. Think of the last time you faced a difficult choice. You weighed options, you asked friends, you made lists of pros and cons, but still you felt stuck. Now imagine holding a mirror, not a mirror of glass, but of symbols. In that mirror you see not the future, but yourself, your fears, your hopes, your hidden tendencies. That is the oracle, a mirror for the soul. It does not bind you, it frees you. It does not predict your fate, it reveals your truth. And with that truth in hand, the next step of the journey becomes clear. Chapter 3. Tarot, From Play to Archetype. When most people hear the word oracle, one image rises above all others. A deck of tarot cards spread across a table, glowing in the light of a candle. But what are these mysterious cards really? Are they tools of magic, ancient wisdom from Egypt, or simply a game that became something more? The truth, as always, is more complex and far more fascinating. The humble origins of tarot did not begin as a mystical tool at all. In 15th century Europe, they were simply playing cards. The game was called tarocchi, and it was popular among the nobility of Italy and France. The earliest decks were beautifully painted, decorated with images of kings, queens, and allegorical figures like justice, love, and fortune. The supernatural aspect was still unnoticed in the background. They were entertainment, a pastime for wealthy families. And yet within these cards lay a seed. Their imagery, symbols of virtue, fate, and mortality, was fertile ground for something deeper. By the 18th century, occultists in France began to reinterpret tarot as a repository of ancient wisdom. They claimed, often without evidence, that the cards preserved secrets of Egyptian priests, Hebrew mystics, and alchemists. Whether or not these claims were historically accurate hardly mattered. What mattered was the effect. Tarot had become a mirror of the human soul. The major arcana, archetypes of the journey at the heart of the tarot, are the 22 cards of the major arcana, the archetypal images that tell a universal story. The Fool, innocence, beginnings, the leap of faith. The Magician, mastery, focus, the power to create. The High Priestess, intuition, mystery, the wisdom of silence. The Lovers, choice, connection, the union of opposites. Death, endings, transformation, rebirth. The Star, hope, renewal, guidance from above. Taken together, these cards form a map of the human journey, a cycle of growth, failure, awakening, and transcendence. Carl Jung recognized them as archetypes, timeless figures that speak to the collective unconscious of all humanity. When you draw a tarot card, you are not summoning an external force. You are encountering one of these archetypes within yourself.
The minor arcana. The everyday world beneath the major arcana lies the minor arcana, 56 cards divided into 4 suits, much like modern playing cards.
White cups represent emotion and relationships, and swords represent thought, conflict, and clarity. Wands represent energy, creativity, and ambition. Yes, pentacles represent material life, work, and the body. These are the everyday mirrors, the reflections of our daily struggles and joys. A 3 of cups may mirror friendship. A 10 of swords may reflect exhaustion and betrayal. Together, the major and minor arcana form a complete mirror, the archetypal and the ordinary, the mythic and the mundane. Too often, tarot is mistaken for a fortune-telling device. The stereotype is familiar. A fortune teller in a dark tent, flipping cards to reveal when you'll marry or how long you'll live. But this reduces tarot to a parody of itself. The power of tarot is not in prediction, but reflection. When you consult the cards, they do not dictate your future. They show you the patterns of the present. They reveal the energies at play, the archetypes moving within you. In their symbols, you may recognize desires you've ignored, fears you've repressed, choices you've been too afraid to make. In this way, tarot is a mirror, and like any mirror, it shows only what is already there, though perhaps in a form you are not ready to see. 3 decks, 3 worlds over time. Countless tarot decks have been created, each with its own flavor and symbolism. Some are playful, some are mystical, some are deeply esoteric. Let me introduce you to 3 that I know well. 3 mirrors, each reflecting a different dimension of the soul. 1. The Osho Zen Tarot. This deck is unlike any other. Where traditional tarot speaks in terms of archetypes and fate, the Osho Zen Tarot speaks the language of the present moment. Its message is not about what will happen or even what has happened. It is about now. The cards carry names like innocence, abundance, creativity. They do not point to destiny but to presence. They remind us that the deepest oracle is not in some distant future, but in the living reality of this moment. When I first worked with the Osho Zen Tarot, I was struck by its freshness. It did not weigh me down with predictions. It invited me into a more playful, open, and flowing way of being. It is a deck of becoming, not foretelling. 2. The Thoth Tarot by Aleister Crowley. If the Osho Zen Tarot is light and playful, the Thoth Tarot is its shadowy opposite, intense, complex, and brimming with esoteric symbolism. Designed by the infamous magician Aleister Crowley and painted by Lady Frida Harris, the Thoth deck is a labyrinth of occult knowledge. Kabbalah, astrology, alchemy, Egyptian mythology, all are woven into its images. For some, the Thoth Tarot feels overwhelming, even unsettling. It does not soften its truths. It confronts you with your depths, your obsessions, your hidden shadows. But for those willing to engage with it, the Thoth Tarot can be a powerful teacher. Its archetypes cut through illusion and demand honesty. To work with this deck is to walk a path of initiation, a path that is not for everyone, but transformative for those who dare. 3. The Weaver's Oracle. Finally, there is the Weaver's Oracle, created by the artist Carolyn Hillier. This is not a traditional tarot, but an oracle deck woven from archetypes of feminine wisdom. The cards are earthy, primal, and deeply embodied. They speak of weaving, birthing, bleeding, creating. They connect us to the cycles of nature, the womb of the earth, the voices of ancient women. For me, the Weaver's Oracle is not about abstract philosophy, but about grounding. It pulls you down into the body, into the soil, into the wildness of life. It reminds us that oracles are not only about lofty visions of destiny, they are also about roots, about earth, about the everyday magic of being alive. The tarot as teacher. Each of these decks, Osho Zen, Thoth, Weavers, reveals a different facet of the mirror. One shows us presence, one shows us shadow, one shows us roots. Together, they illustrate a deeper truth, that tarot is not a fixed system of fortune-telling, but a living dialogue with the soul. The deck you choose, the card you draw, the meaning you see, all are reflections of your inner landscape at that moment. This is why tarot can never truly be objective. It is not meant to be. It is a conversation between symbol and soul. Tarot in therapy and growth. In recent years, even psychology has begun to recognize the value of tarot and oracle cards. Therapists sometimes use them not to predict, but to provoke dialogue. A client may draw a card and project their inner world onto its image. In describing the card, they reveal their unconscious fears and desires. The therapist does not interpret for them. The card becomes a mirror that helps the client interpret themselves. In this way, tarot becomes not superstition but psychology, not fortune-telling, but soul-telling. The power of play. And perhaps the greatest gift of tarot is that it reminds us to play. When we shuffle cards, when we spread them across a table, when we see what images appear, we step into a space of wonder. We let go of control and allow synchronicity to speak. This playfulness is essential, for in play the mirror clears. In play we glimpse truths that rigid seriousness cannot see. To consult the tarot is to step into a conversation with yourself, to see your own story woven in symbols, to recognize that the fool, the magician, the lover, and even death itself are not out there. They are in here. The tarot is not a book of fate. It is a mirror of becoming, and when we look into it, we do not see the future. We see ourselves. Chapter 4. The I Ching, the Book of Changes. East of the Mediterranean world, another oracle was born. One of the oldest, most enduring, and most subtle of them all. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, has guided emperors, sages, and seekers in China for more than 3,000 years. Unlike the dramatic visions of Delphi or the symbolic paintings of tarot, the I Ching speaks in hexagrams, 6 lines, broken or unbroken, forming a code of balance between yin and yang. At first glance it seems abstract, mathematical, but within these lines lives a profound vision of life itself, that everything is in motion, that all existence is flux, a living philosophy of change. The I Ching does not predict what will happen. It shows how things move. Each hexagram represents a state of being, waiting, retreat, conflict, harmony, renewal. To consult it is to place yourself in the river of change, to ask, where am I in the flow? The ancient Chinese saw the universe as a dance of opposites, light and dark, firm and yielding, heaven and earth. The I Ching reflects this eternal rhythm. Its message is not, this will happen, but rather, this is the pattern moving through you now. If you align with it, harmony follows. If you resist, struggle arises. The sage's mirror in imperial China, rulers consulted the I Ching before wars and reforms. But its wisdom was not limited to kings. Farmers, poets, monks, all turned to it as a mirror of the Tao, the way. One story tells of Confucius himself, who studied the I Ching so deeply that he said, if I had another 50 years, I would devote them all to this book. For him, it was not a tool of superstition, but a path of ethical self-cultivation. Synchronicity and the coins. When you toss 3 coins to form a hexagram, the result is not mere chance. As Jung observed, it is synchronicity, a moment where inner state and outer event align. The hexagram you receive resonates with the hidden pattern of your life. To sit with a hexagram is to meditate on change itself. You learn that nothing is fixed. Joy passes, sorrow passes, fortune passes, misfortune passes. The wisdom lies in flowing with the changes, not clinging to permanence. The I Ching whispers a truth as relevant now as it was 3 millennia ago, that the only constant is change. To live wisely is not to control the river, but to move with its current. And when we cast the coins, we are not predicting destiny. We are glimpsing the dance of becoming, of which we are a part. Chapter 5. Between Superstition and Science. Whenever we speak of oracles, a shadow quickly follows. The accusation of superstition. How can cards or coins reveal truth? Skeptics ask. Surely it is nothing more than chance, nothing more than self-delusion. And yet, if oracles are mere nonsense, why have they persisted across centuries, across continents, across cultures? Why do even modern people, armed with science and technology, still turn to tarot decks, astrology charts, or dream interpretations? The psychological function modern psychology provides one answer. Oracles externalize the inner world. When a person lays down cards or interprets a sign, they project their unconscious onto symbols. The oracle becomes a canvas, a mirror, a dialogue partner. This does not require belief in supernatural powers. It requires only recognition of the psyche's depth, its hunger for symbols. In fact, many therapists now integrate oracle cards into counseling, not as fortune-telling but as tools for self-reflection. The scientific mirror, even science in its own way, speaks of oracles. Economists model the future with graphs and equations. Meteorologists read the sky with satellites instead of augurs. Geneticists read codes written in DNA, foretelling tendencies and probabilities. These too are oracles, structured systems that interpret signs to reveal hidden patterns. The difference lies not in the impulse, but in the methodology. The superstition trap, and yet superstition is real. Throughout history, charlatans have exploited the vulnerable, turning oracles into manipulation. From medieval fortune tellers preying on fear to modern scams online, the oracle's mirror has often been distorted into a cage. The danger lies not in the symbols themselves, but in forgetting the principle of freedom. A true oracle never enslaves, it invites. A false oracle dictates, frightens, and controls. Here lies the line between superstition and wisdom. When we hand over our will, when we obey symbols blindly, we fall into superstition. But when we engage with them reflectively, openly, playfully, they become mirrors of growth. Chapter 6. The Oracle Within. Perhaps the greatest secret of all oracles is this: they do not speak from outside. They speak from within, the inner voice. Every symbol, every sign, every hexagram is a bridge to what you already know, but have not yet admitted. Oracles give form to the whisper of intuition, the subtle tug of conscience, the buried archetype. Mystics across traditions have said the same. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen." The Christian tradition speaks of the still, small voice of God. Buddhism calls it the clear mirror of mind. Sometimes the greatest oracle is silence itself. When we sit still, breathe and listen, patterns reveal themselves without cards or coins. The rustle of leaves, the rhythm of breath, the sudden insight that comes unbidden, all are oracles of the inner self. In the end, every oracle, Delphi, tarot, runes, the I Ching, points us back to the same source. The wisdom we carry, the mirror we polish, the truth we already hold. Chapter 7. Why we still seek oracles. Why do millions of people consult tarot readers, astrologers, and online fortune tellers? The answer lies not in predicting the future, but in making meaning. The human hunger for pattern. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. As humans, we cannot tolerate chaos and suffer the consequences of our own actions. We are almost always the source of our own failure. We look for order in the stars, in history, in data, in dreams. Oracles give us a symbolic order, an assurance that beneath confusion there is meaning. Oracles also offer ritual. To light a candle, shuffle cards, or cast coins is to create sacred space in a disenchanted world. It slows us down, opens the door to reflection. Even if we do not believe, the act itself has power. The story of the self, above all, oracles give us stories. A tarot reading, a hexagram, a dream, all weave our lives into narrative. They remind us that we are not random fragments, but characters in a larger drama. And to live within a story is to live with purpose. And so, across time, the same request echoes: do not tell me what will happen. Help me to know myself. If this journey into the world of oracles spoke to you, subscribe to This Is It for more mysteries. Like, share, and tell us in the comments, have you ever faced an oracle of your own?